She was just a waitress, invisible to the powerful men in the room, until she opened her mouth.
Did you just tell me to do that?
Thought she was only clearing plates at
Yes,
the
now
most
take my order,
exclusive
please.
table in New York.
Of course,
But
what
when
would you
she
like?
answered a billionaire's phone call in a perfect, rare Sicilian dialect, she did not just save a deal. She accidentally stepped into a trap. Dominic Caldwell did not thank her. He watched her walk away, turned to his security detail, and gave a chilling order that would change her life forever. Don't let her leave. What happens when a minimum wage waitress knows too much? The answer will shock you. The obsidian room did not smell like food. It smelled like old money and fear. Perched on the 45th floor of a skyscraper that cut into the Manhattan clouds, it was the kind of restaurant where the menu had no prices and the water cost more than Edith Stevens made in an hour. Edith adjusted her black waistcoat, wincing as a sharp pain shot through her heel. She had been on her feet for 10 hours. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her face was bare of makeup. Management liked the staff to blend into the background, elegant, useful, and silent. Table 4 needs a refill on the sparkling. Move it, Stevens. The floor manager, a sweaty man named Roger, hissed into her ear. Edith nodded and grabbed a chilled bottle of San Pellegrino. Yes, sir. She crossed the plush carpet with her eyes fixed on the floor. Eye contact was forbidden unless a guest made it first. She knew exactly who sat at table 4. The whole kitchen had been buzzing about it since 3 o'clock. Dominic Caldwell. The name carried weight. He was not just a billionaire. He was an institution. At 34, he controlled shipping lanes, technology conglomerates, and, if rumors were true, half the politicians in Albany. He was currently locked in a hostile takeover of a European logistics firm, a deal worth billions. As Edith approached, the tension at the table was almost physical. Dominic sat at the head with his back to the window. He was younger than he looked in magazines, with dark hair cut with military precision and eyes the color of cold steel. He was not eating. He was staring at a tablet, jaw clenched. Across from him sat Gavin Priestley, his second in command, a nervous man with a receding hairline who kept wiping sweat from his upper lip. I'm telling you, Dominic, the Italians aren't picking up, Gavin said, his voice trembling. The deadline is in 20 minutes. If we don't get the confirmation code from the Moretti family, the merger collapses. We lose the deposit. We lose everything. Dominic did not look up. Keep calling. I have been. Their lawyer is screaming in a dialect I cannot understand, and our translator is stuck in traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge. Edith uncorked the water bottle with practiced silence and poured sparkling water into Dominic's crystal glass, careful not to spill a single drop. Just then, the phone in the center of the table buzzed. It was a sleek, encrypted satellite phone, vibrating violently against the mahogany. Dominic stared at it. Put it on speaker. Gavin hesitated, then tapped the screen. A voice exploded from the tiny speaker. It was loud, aggressive, and speaking far too fast. Gavin went pale. Hello? Hello, Mr. Moretti? English, please. English. The voice on the other end grew louder, more distorted with rage. Dominic slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Gavin, fix this. Now. What is he saying? I don't know. Gavin stammered. It sounds like Italian, but it's different. It's too fast. The translator is still 20 minutes away. Edith froze. Her hand hovered over the water glass. She knew that voice. Not the man, but the cadence. The clipped vowels. The rough, guttural anger. It was not standard Italian. It was not even common Sicilian. It was a highly specific dialect from the inland villages near Corleone, a dialect rarely spoken by anyone under 60. It was the dialect her grandmother used when she was furious. The man on the phone was threatening to cancel the deal because he felt disrespected. He was asking for someone named Uncle Tony and demanding to speak to someone with blood, not a lawyer. He was about to hang up. If he hung up, Dominic Caldwell lost the deal. If Dominic lost the deal, the restaurant lost its biggest client. If the restaurant lost the client, Roger would fire everyone in a rage. Edith did not think. She acted. He's not asking for money, Edith said softly. The silence at the table was immediate. Dominic Caldwell slowly lifted his head. For the first time, those steel-gray eyes locked onto her. It felt like standing in front of an oncoming train. Excuse me. Dominic asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. Edith gripped the water bottle tighter. The man on the phone isn't asking for more money. He's asking for respect. He thinks you're stalling because you don't have the authority to sign. He's about to cut the line. Gavin scoffed, his face red. You're a waitress. Pour the water and step back. The voice on the phone shouted again. Who is there? Is there anyone who speaks like a human? Dominic held up a hand to silence Gavin. He never broke eye contact with Edith. Answer him, he said. Sir, I can't answer him. It was not a request. Edith took a breath. Her posture changed. The submissive hunch of the waitress vanished and was replaced by a calm, confident stillness. Signori Moretti, she began, her voice dropping into the rough, old cadence of the dialect. Mr. Moretti, forgive me. Mr. Caldwell cannot speak, because he is waiting for you. There is no need for delay. The papers are ready. There was stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then a lower voice rumbled back. Tu chi parli siciliano? Edith replied quickly in the same dialect. I am nobody, but I know time is gold. Sign it. A pause. Then a rough laugh crackled through the speaker. Va bene. Passami u patri. All right, pass me your boss. Edith straightened and looked at Dominic. He's ready to sign. He just needed to hear someone from the old country to know he wasn't being scammed by Wall Street lawyers. Dominic stared at her for a long, uncomfortable second. He did not thank her. He did not smile. He simply took the phone, switched to English, and continued the negotiation, knowing the tension had broken. Edith stepped back, her heart hammering like a trapped bird, and quickly finished pouring the water before retreating to the shadows of the service station. Roger, the manager, grabbed her arm the moment she was out of earshot. His fingers dug into her bicep. What do you think you're doing? He hissed, his face turning purple. You spoke to a guest. You interfered in a business call. Are you insane? He asked me to. I do not care. You embarrassed this establishment. You're done, Stevens. Clock out. Get your things. Leave. Edith felt the blood drain from her face. She needed this job. Her sister's tuition was due in 3 days. Roger, please. I just saved his deal. Out. He pointed toward the kitchen doors. Edith bit her lip until she tasted blood. She nodded, untied her apron, and walked through the swinging doors, past the chaotic kitchen, and into the locker room. She changed into her worn jeans and oversized sweater, shoved her uniform into her bag, and walked out the back exit into the cool night air of the alley. She took a deep breath to steady herself. She was fired again. As she turned toward the subway station, a black SUV with tinted windows screeched to a halt, blocking the alley exit. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. They were massive, built like linebackers. Edith clutched her bag and backed up. I don't have any money. The rear door of the SUV opened. Dominic Caldwell stepped out. He looked different under the harsh streetlight, taller, sharper, and terrifyingly calm. He looked at the security guards, then pointed a finger at Edith. Don't let her leave, he said. Edith's instinct was to run, but there was nowhere to go. The brick walls were slick with rain, and the 2 security guards blocked the only exit. Dominic stood in the middle like an immovable object in a bespoke Italian suit. Mr. Caldwell, Edith said, her voice shaking but steady. I was just fired. I'm going home. Dominic ignored her and walked closer, his shoes clicking on the wet pavement. He stopped 3 feet away, invading her space. He smelled of expensive scotch and rain. Who are you? He asked. Edith Stevens. I was your server. I know your name. I saw it on the tag. Dominic said dismissively. I want to know who you really are, because waiters at the Obsidian do not speak a Sicilian dialect specific to the Corleone region, a dialect used almost exclusively by the Moretti crime syndicate. Edith's eyes widened. Crime syndicate? I thought they were a logistics firm. Dominic's eyes narrowed. So you admit you know the dialect? I admit nothing other than knowing how to speak, Edith snapped. Exhaustion made her bold. My grandmother was from Prizzi. She raised me. That is how she spoke. I learned it at the kitchen table, not in a crime family meeting. Dominic studied her face, looking for a lie. He was a man who made his fortune reading people, spotting the tiny expressions that betrayed deceit. He saw fear in Edith, but he did not see dishonesty. "Your grandmother," he repeated. "Yes. She died 3 years ago." "And where did you learn the protocol?" "You knew not to address him directly at first. You knew to lower your voice. You used the term Voja, the honorific used for elders and dons." "I have a degree in linguistics from Columbia," Edith said, lifting her chin. "Or I did until I had to drop out. I studied sociolinguistics. I know how power works in language." Dominic stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to one of his guards. "Check it." The guard pulled out a tablet and started tapping. "Mr. Caldwell, am I being detained?" Edith asked, gripping her bag strap. "Because this feels like kidnapping." "It's a job interview," Dominic said coldly. "I already have a job. Or I did 10 minutes ago. You have a minimum wage job that you just lost. I'm offering you something else. I'm not interested. You do not even know what the salary is." "I do not care. Men who corner women in alleys usually do not offer 401ks. For a split second, the corner of Dominic's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. The guard looked up. "Boss, she checks out. Edith Stevens, full scholarship to Columbia, 4.0 GPA. Dropped out in her junior year. Father deceased, mother in assisted living. Younger sister Sarah, currently enrolled at NYU. Tuition payments are late." Edith felt shame burn her cheeks. They had dug up her whole life in 30 seconds. "That is private." "Privacy is a luxury for people who aren't interesting," Dominic said. "And right now, Miss Stevens, you are very interesting." He took a step closer. "The man you spoke to, Luca Moretti, is notoriously paranoid. We have been trying to close this merger for 6 months. He trusts no one, but he listened to you. He liked you. So tomorrow morning, I fly to Rome to finalize the contracts. Moretti has insisted that the girl from the phone be present. He thinks you're part of my inner circle. He thinks I have a Sicilian consigliera." Edith let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "You want me to pretend to be your advisor? Et pour what, Monsieur Caldwell? I do not negotiate mergers." "I do not need you to negotiate. I have lawyers for that. I need you to translate. Not just the words, Edith. I need you to translate the intent." His gaze sharpened. "Moretti speaks English perfectly well when he wants to. When he switches to dialect, he's hiding something. He's signaling his men. I need to know what he is really saying while he's saying it." "And if I refuse?" Dominic glanced at the guard holding the tablet. "Your sister's tuition is $22,000 for the semester. It's 2 months overdue. She will be administratively withdrawn on Monday." Edith felt as though she had been punched in the gut. "How dare you?" "I will pay it," Dominic said. "All of it, plus your mother's care facility for a year, and I will give you $50,000 in cash for 3 days of work." Rain began to fall harder, drumming on the SUV roof. $50,000. That would change everything. It would save Sarah's degree. It would get her mother the therapy she needed. But looking at Dominic Caldwell, she saw danger. He was not a hero. He was a shark offering a ride to a minnow. "Why me?" she whispered. "You can hire professional translators." "I have professionals," Dominic said, his voice dropping low. "I do not need a professional. I need someone he does not expect, someone he underestimates, just like I underestimated you." He extended a hand. It was a business gesture, but in the dark alley, it looked like a deal with the devil. "Get in the car, Edith, or go back to the subway and tell your sister why she's coming home next week." Edith looked at the puddles at her feet, then at the open door of the SUV. She thought of Sarah's face when she got into NYU. She thought of the eviction notices piling up on the kitchen counter. She met Dominic's eyes. "I need half the money wired to the school tonight," she said. Dominic did not blink. "Done." Edith stepped into the car. The private jet was unlike anything Edith had ever seen. It was less like an airplane and more like a flying penthouse. Cream leather seats, gold fixtures, and a silence so deep it felt pressurized. They were somewhere over the Atlantic. It was 3 in the morning. Edith sat on one side of the cabin in her jeans and sweater. Dominic sat opposite her, changed into a fresh cashmere pullover that probably cost more than her father's car once had. He was reading files, and had not spoken since takeoff. Gavin, the nervous assistant, paced the aisle, glaring at Edith with a mixture of suspicion and disdain. "I still think this is a mistake, Dominic," Gavin muttered. "She's a civilian. She's a liability. What if she freezes? What if she sells us out?" "She will not," Dominic said without looking up. "How do you know?" "Because she's hungry," Dominic said. At last he looked up and met Edith's eyes. "Hungry people do not bite the hand that feeds them until they are full." "And she's very far from full," Edith said, bristling. "I am sitting right here." "I know," Dominic replied. "Read this." He slid a heavy file across the table. Edith opened it. It was a dossier on the Moretti family. Not just business records, but photos of men entering buildings, transcripts of wiretap calls, and lists of known associates. "I thought this was a logistics merger," Edith said, scanning the pages. "This looks like a RICO indictment." "Moretti Shipping is a legitimate business," Dominic said carefully. "But Luca Moretti has traditional roots. The family is divided. Half of them want to go legitimate and become a global power. The other half, led by his cousin, wants to keep doing things the old way. Smuggling, extortion. And which side are you betting on?" "I am betting on the assets," Dominic said coldly. "I am buying the shipping lanes. Once I own the company, I clean house. I fire the cousins. I keep the boats. But to get the signature, I have to play nice with Luca." "And if the cousins figure out you're planning to fire them?" Dominic paused. "Then the meeting in Rome might get violent." Edith closed the file. Her hands were cold. "You didn't mention violence in the alley." "I said I needed you to translate intent. That includes threats." Dominic leaned forward. "Luca is going to test you. He's going to speak in riddles. He's going to use proverbs. If you miss a nuance, if you mistranslate a single idiom, I could lose the deal, or I could lose my life." "You are trying to scare me," Edith said. "I am trying to prepare you." Dominic stood and walked to a wardrobe built into the bulkhead. He pulled out a garment bag. "Go change," he said, tossing it onto the seat beside her. Edith unzipped the bag. Inside was a black dress. Simple, elegant, and clearly couture. Beside it was a pair of heels that looked like weapons. "What is this?" "Armor," Dominic said. Edith looked at him. "We land in 2 hours," he added, turning his back to give her privacy, but staying in the cabin. "When we step off this plane, you are no longer Edith the waitress. You are Edith Stevens, my personal consultant. You are arrogant. You are bored. You are expensive. Do you understand?" Edith looked at the dress and touched the fabric. It felt soft as water. "Why arrogant?" "Because predators respect aggression," Dominic said, glancing at her reflection in the window. "If you act like prey, they will eat you. If you act like you own the room, they will wonder why." Edith went to the lavatory to change. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly. Too perfectly. He must have guessed her size, or the terrifyingly efficient Gavin had. She let her hair down and applied the red lipstick she found in the amenity kit. When she stepped back into the cabin, Gavin stopped pacing. His mouth opened slightly. Dominic looked up from his files. He said nothing for a long time. His eyes moved from her shoes to her face. Something in the air changed. "Well?" Edith asked, feeling exposed and powerful at once. Dominic stood and crossed to her. He reached for her hand. Edith flinched, but he was only reaching for the cheap silver chain she always wore. "Take this off," he said softly. His fingers brushed her neck. "Why? It looks cheap," he whispered. "And tonight you are priceless." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a diamond choker, thin and delicate, with a stone in the center the size of a quail's egg. "Dominic, I can't wear this." "It is not a gift. It is a prop." He stepped behind her and fastened the clasp. His breath ghosted against her ear. "Do not lose it. It is worth more than the plane." Edith felt a shiver run down her spine. She turned to face him. They were inches apart. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "Good," Dominic said, his eyes dark. "Fear makes you sharp." The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Mr. Caldwell, we are beginning our descent into Rome. Security teams are awaiting your arrival." Dominic buttoned his jacket. Game time, Edith. Remember, do not let them leave until I have the signature. As the plane banked and the lights of Rome glittered below like spilled jewels, Edith realized she had made a terrible mistake. She was not just a translator. She was the bait, and she was walking straight into a lion's den with a man who might be the most dangerous predator of them all. The convoy of armored Mercedes wound its way up the autostrada, leaving the bustle of Rome behind for the dark cypress-covered hills of the countryside. Edith sat stiffly beside Dominic. The silence in the car was heavier than the humid Italian air outside. "Stop fidgeting," Dominic murmured, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "You look nervous." "Consultants are not nervous. They are bored." "I'm not nervous," Edith lied, smoothing the silk of her dress. "I'm terrified. You didn't tell me we were meeting him at a private villa. I thought this was a boardroom meeting." "Luca Moretti does not do boardrooms. He does dinners. If you do not eat, you do not sign." Dominic turned to her. "Remember the rules. Do not speak unless he addresses you directly. When you translate, look at me, not him. And whatever happens, do not eat the olives." "Why? Are they poisoned?" Dominic adjusted his cuffs. "No, they are his mother's recipe. If you eat one, you must praise them for 10 minutes, or he takes it as a personal insult. We do not have 10 minutes. The car crunched over gravel and stopped in front of a sprawling stone villa that looked like a fortress. Armed guards with earpieces patrolled the perimeter. As they stepped out, the air smelled of jasmine and cigar smoke. Gavin, paler than usual, trailed behind them clutching the briefcase with the contracts. They were ushered into a grand dining hall. The walls were covered in Renaissance tapestries, but the table was set for a modern war council. At the head sat Luca Moretti. He was massive in his 60s, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that disappeared into folds of flesh when he smiled, which he was doing now. "Benvenuti, Mr. Caldwell." Luca boomed, rising with surprising agility. He spread his arms wide. Dominic stepped forward and shook his hand. "Luca, thank you for hosting us." Luca's eyes immediately darted to Edith. The smile vanished, replaced by predatory curiosity. "And this must be the girl," he said softly. Dominic nodded. "This is Edith Stevens, my associate." Luca walked around the table, circling Edith. He stopped inches from her face, smelling her perfume. It took every ounce of her willpower not to step back. "Tu parli dialetto di patria?" he asked quietly. "You speak the language of my father," Edith answered in the deep, thick dialect of the Corleone Hills. "I speak as I was taught, and I understand everything that is said and everything that is kept silent." Luca's eyebrows shot up. He stared at her, then let out a roar of laughter and slapped the table. "Brava! She has fire, this one. Sit, eat, then we talk business." Dinner was an endurance test. Courses arrived one after another. Truffle risotto, roasted lamb, bitter greens, espresso. Edith ate sparingly, translating rapid-fire conversations between Dominic and Luca's lieutenants. Then she noticed something strange. Dominic was not just negotiating price. He was negotiating territory. He was conceding shipping lanes in the Adriatic that he had previously sworn to keep. Why was he giving up so much leverage? As espresso was served, the mood shifted. The plates were cleared. The guard stepped closer. "So," Luca said, lighting a thin cigar, "the contract. You offer me $2 billion for the logistics arm. You keep the staff. You keep the traditions." "That is the agreement," Dominic said smoothly. "We value continuity." Luca blew smoke toward the ceiling, then looked at Edith. He switched to the heavy dialect, so quietly that the other men could not hear. Edith froze. What he said was clear enough. He knew Dominic wanted to fire his cousin Stefano. He knew Dominic intended to clean out the criminal elements of the company. If she translated that directly, the deal would die. Dominic had promised continuity, but Luca had already seen through him. Dominic looked at Edith, waiting. What did he say? Her mind raced. If she lied, Luca would know. He spoke enough English to catch a blatant lie, and he was testing her loyalty. If she told the truth, violence might erupt right there. She turned to Dominic with a calm face. "He says he is worried about his cousin Stefano," Edith said carefully. He fears Stefano's talents will not be appreciated in an American corporate structure. He is asking for a guarantee of Stefano's position. It was brilliant. She acknowledged the meaning while softening the tone from accusation to concern. Luca's eyes narrowed. He knew what she had done. Dominic did not blink. Tell him Stefano will have a position that reflects his contribution. Edith turned back to Luca. He says Stefano will receive the position he deserves. To Dominic, it meant Stefano would eventually be removed. To Luca, it could mean respect, or it could mean threat. Luca stared at Edith for a long, agonizing minute. Then he stubbed out a cigar. "You are good," he whispered to her in English. "Very good." He snapped his fingers. "Bring the pen." Gavin scrambled to open the briefcase and lay the documents on the table. Luca uncapped a gold fountain pen. The room held its breath. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors burst open. 3 men stormed in, not guards, but gunmen in cheap suits, sweating and armed. The man in front had wild eyes. "Do not sign it, uncle," he screamed in Italian. It was Stefano. "Stefano, put the gun away." Luca barked, not moving from his chair. "He's lying to you." Stefano shouted, pointing his pistol at Dominic. "I have the emails. I have the internal memos. Gavin sent them to me. They are going to dissolve the family the moment the ink is dry." Dominic stood slowly, positioning himself in front of Edith. "Gavin," Dominic said, his voice ice-cold. Gavin was trembling. He backed away from the table. "I had no choice, Dominic. They threatened my wife. Stefano said he'd kill her." "You idiot," Dominic hissed. "Kill them." Stefano shouted. "Kill the American." Chaos exploded. The sound of the first gunshot was deafening. It shattered the wine carafe beside Edith's hand, spraying red liquid and glass across the tablecloth. "Down!" Dominic roared. He tackled Edith to the floor, just as bullets shredded the high-backed chairs, where they had been sitting seconds earlier. Luca's guards returned fire immediately. The room dissolved into smoke, noise, and shattered furniture. It was a civil war. Dominic grabbed Edith's wrist. His grip was like iron. "Crawl to the kitchen." They scrambled over the cold marble floor, glass cutting into Edith's palms. Above them, men screamed and furniture splintered. Edith saw Gavin fall, struck in the chest, the briefcase of contracts scattering across the floor. They burst through the swinging doors into the kitchen. The staff had fled. Dominic kicked the back door open and dragged Edith out into the cool night air. "My car," Dominic shouted. "The driver is armed." They ran toward the Mercedes, but as they approached, they saw the driver slumped over the steering wheel. The windshield shattered. "Damn it," Dominic cursed. He scanned the courtyard. A vintage Alfa Romeo Spider sat near the stables, Luca's personal car. The keys were likely in it. Luca was arrogant enough to leave them there. "Get in," Dominic ordered. He vaulted into the driver's seat. Edith threw herself into the passenger's side, just as Stefano emerged from the villa, firing wildly into the dark. A bullet struck the rear fender. Dominic twisted the ignition. The engine roared to life. He slammed the car into gear, spinning the tires on the gravel, and fishtailed out of the gates. "Are you hit?" Dominic shouted over the wind. The convertible top was down. Edith checked herself. Her dress was torn. Her hands were bleeding, but she felt no bullet wounds. "I'm fine." "Who was that?" "Stefano, the cousin. He staged a coup." Dominic's face was grim in the dashboard light. He drove like a maniac, taking winding mountain curves at 80 miles an hour. "Gavin betrayed you," Edith yelled. Gavin was weak. "I knew he was leaking something. I just did not think he'd leak the timeline." He checked the rearview mirror. Headlights were approaching fast. "They're gaining on us," Edith cried. "Hold on." Dominic killed the headlights. The world plunged into darkness. They were racing down a mountain road in pitch blackness, guided only by moonlight and Dominic's memory. "You're going to kill us," Edith screamed. "Trust me." He jerked the wheel hard to the right. The car skidded off the paved road and onto a dirt track hidden by olive trees. He drove 50 yards into the grove and killed the engine. Silence fell over the hillside. Seconds later, the 2 SUVs roared past on the main road, their headlights sweeping the darkness and missing the turnoff completely. The sound faded into the distance. Edith let out a breath, she did not realize she had been holding. She was shaking uncontrollably. Adrenaline crashed through her, leaving her cold and nauseous. Dominic did not move. He sat gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Edith looked at him. His perfect suit was ruined with dust and glass. There was a cut on his cheekbone, bleeding slowly. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew Stefano was going to try something." "I knew he was angry. I did not know he had Gavin." Dominic turned to her and brushed a shard of glass from her hair. His hand lingered on her cheek. "I'm sorry. I promised you $50,000. I did not promise you a war zone." "We cannot go back to Rome," Edith said, her voice trembling. "They'll be watching the airport. They'll be watching your hotel." "No, we cannot go back. I have a safe house in Tuscany. It is about 2 hours north. No one knows about it, not even Gavin. And then I figure out how to get you out of this country alive." Edith looked at the diamond choker at her throat. It felt heavy now, like a collar. "Let's go," she said. The safe house was a misnomer. It was a crumbling stone farmhouse in the middle of a vineyard, miles from the nearest town. It had no internet, no staff, and furniture covered in dust sheets. But it had a fireplace, a wine cellar, and a first aid kit. It was 4 in the morning. Dominic sat on the edge of a dusty sofa, his shirt unbuttoned, cleaning the cut on his cheek with rubbing alcohol. Edith was in the small kitchen boiling water on an old gas stove. She found pasta and a jar of tomatoes in the pantry and brought 2 bowls into the living room. They ate in silence, the fire crackling in the hearth. The intimacy of the moment was jarring. Hours earlier he had been the billionaire and she had been the hired help. Now they were simply 2 survivors in a cold house. "Why?" Edith asked at last. Dominic looked up. "Why this deal? You have billions. You have power. Why risk your life for a shipping company in Italy?" "It's not just money. I saw your face when Luca mentioned the traditions. You hate them. You hate the Morettas." Dominic put his bowl down and poured 2 glasses of red wine from a bottle he had found. "My father," Dominic said, "was not a billionaire. He was a truck driver in New Jersey. He owned a small logistics firm. 1 truck, then 2. He worked 18 hours a day." He took a sip. "When I was 12, the Moretti family, Luca's father, tried to extort him. They wanted a cut of his routes. My father refused. He was a proud man. Too proud." Edith felt a chill. "What happened?" "They burned his warehouse with him inside." Dominic's voice was flat, which made it worse. "The police called it an electrical fire. Insurance did not pay. My mother drank herself to death 2 years later. I was put in foster care." Edith stared at him. The cold, steely tyrant from the boardroom suddenly made sense. He was not building an empire for greed. He was building a weapon. "I spent 20 years building Caldwell Industries for one reason," Dominic continued. "To become big enough to buy Moretti Shipping. I do not want their money. I want to dismantle them. I want to fire every cousin, sell every boat, and turn their criminal empire into a legitimate business that follows the law. I want to erase their legacy." "And Stefano figured it out," Edith whispered. "Yes." Dominic looked at her. "I dragged you into a vendetta, Edith. I was selfish. I saw talent in you, the language, the grit, and I used it. I am sorry." Edith moved closer and took the cotton pad from his hand. She gently dabbed at the cut on his cheek. "You did not just use me," she said softly. "You trusted me. In that room, when Luca tested me, you didn't interrupt. You let me lead." "You were magnificent," Dominic said. His eyes held hers. The intensity was there again, but no longer cold. It was burning. "I'm just a waitress," Edith whispered. "No," Dominic said. He leaned in, his hand cupping the back of her neck, his thumb tracing the line of the diamond choker. "You were never just a waitress. You were hiding, just like me." He kissed her. It was not tentative. It was desperate, fueled by adrenaline and the raw vulnerability of the night. Edith kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair. The barriers of class and employer melted away in the heat of the firelight. For the first time in her life, Edith did not feel invisible. She felt seen. And for the first time in his life, Dominic did not feel alone. They fell asleep on the sofa, wrapped in each other's arms, while the storm outside passed and the sun began to rise over the vineyards. But morning brought reality. Dominic's satellite phone, which he had thought was broken, buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text message. Not from Gavin. From Luca Moretti. I am alive. Stefano has the villa. He is coming for you. I can stop him, but I need the signature. Come to the docks in Civitavecchia alone, or the girl's sister in New York pays the price. Dominic read the message and went pale. What is it? Edith asked, waking up. He knows about Sarah, Dominic said, his voice cracking. Stefano must have accessed Gavin's files. He knows where your sister lives. Edith stood, panic gripping her chest. We have to call the police. The police in Civitavecchia are on Stefano's payroll. There is no police. Dominic stood and buttoned his ruined shirt. There's only one way out. We finished the deal. It's a trap, Edith said. Of course it is, Dominic replied, checking the magazine of the pistol he had taken from the glove box of the Alfa Romeo. But I am not going there to sign a contract, Edith. I am going there to end this. I'm coming with you. No, it's too dangerous. He asked for the girl, Edith said, her voice steady. If I am not there, he will know something is wrong. He will hurt Sarah. I am coming. Dominic looked at her and saw the same fire he had seen in the restaurant alley. He nodded once. Do not let me down, he said. I never do, she replied. The port of Civitavecchia was a graveyard of rusted steel and salt-worn concrete. The Mediterranean wind howled off the gray water, cutting through the thin fabric of Edith's ruined dress like a knife. It was a desolate industrial wasteland, a maze of towering cranes and stacked shipping containers that felt a world away from the luxury of the obsidian room. Dominic stopped the Alfa Romeo in the shadow of a decommissioned crane. The silence inside the car was deafening. He gripped the wheel so tightly the leather creaked. You stay in the car, he said, his voice low and ragged. If you hear shots, you drive. You drive until the tank is dry, and you do not look back. Edith looked at him. The cut on his cheek had stopped bleeding, but his eyes were haunted. He was preparing to die. He was preparing to walk into Warehouse 4 and trade his life for the safety of a woman he had met 24 hours ago. No, Edith said. Her voice did not tremble. Dominic, this is not a negotiation. Stefano is unstable. He is not a businessman. He is a thug with a birthright. And that is why you need me, she continued, reaching for the door handle. He expects you to be a hero. He expects you to bluster and threaten. He does not expect me. She stepped out into the biting wind. Her black gown was torn at the hem, stained with the dust of the safe house and the grime of their escape. The diamond choker at her throat caught the weak sunlight, glittering like a defiant star. She did not look like a victim. She looked like a queen who had survived a coup. Dominic stared at her for a heartbeat. Then he nodded, drew his pistol, and tucked it into the small of his back. Stay behind me, he ordered. They walked toward Warehouse 4. The metal door was already rolled up, revealing a cavernous, dimly lit space that smelled of diesel, old fish, and impending violence. Dust motes danced in shafts of light piercing through the corrugated roof. In the center of the empty floor, betrayal waited. Luca Moretti sat on a folding metal chair, looking smaller than he had the night before. His face was gray. Beads of sweat stood on his forehead, and a thick bandage was wrapped around his midsection, stained dark red. He looked like an old lion finally brought down by jackals. Standing behind him was Stefano. The nephew was vibrating with manic energy, eyes wild, pistol loose in his hand. 10 men flanked them, the family's enforcement arm, carrying submachine guns. Their faces were impassive, though several shifted uncomfortably as Dominic and Edith entered the light. You came. Stefano sneered, his voice echoing off the metal walls. I told you, Uncle, the American is stupid. He thinks this is a movie. Dominic stopped 20 feet away, standing tall and projecting a calm he did not feel. Edith positioned herself slightly behind him to his left, scanning the room and reading the micro-expressions of the guards. I came for the signature, Dominic said, voice level and cold, and for the guarantee that the Stevens family in New York remains untouched. Stefano let out a barking, hysterical laugh. The signature? You think you are here to buy a company? There is no signature. You are here to transfer the funds to an offshore account I control, and once the money clears, you die. That is the deal. Luca looked up at Dominic, his eyes filled with shame. The boy is impatient. Luca rasped. Shut up, old man. Stefano shouted, backhanding his uncle. Luca's head snapped back. A murmur of unease ran through the guards. These were veterans. They had served Luca for decades, and now they were watching a chaotic upstart strike his own blood. Dominic took a slow step forward. Is this how it ends, Luca? A legacy of honor spanning 3 generations, ended by a greedy child who strikes his own blood. I said shut up. Stefano screamed, leveling his weapon at Dominic's chest. Transfer the money, Caldwell, or I start by shooting the girl. Dominic moved to shield Edith, but she did not cower. Instead, she stepped out from behind him. Edith, get back. Dominic hissed. She ignored him. The adrenaline in her veins crystallized into cold clarity. She walked past Dominic, straight toward the barrel of Stefano's gun. Stop, Stefano shouted, surprised by her movement. Edith stopped 10 feet from him. She did not look at Stefano. She looked past him, locking eyes with the captain of the guards, a scarred man with gray hair who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. She drew a deep breath. Then she spoke, not in English, and not in the polished Italian of Rome, but in the deepest, oldest form of the Sicilian dialect, the language of the soil, the language her grandmother had taught her, Siti di Moretti. Her voice rang through the warehouse with shocking force. It was not a plea. It was a command. The guards blinked. That dialect, spoken with such native authority by an American girl in a ruined dress, hit something deep in them. Who is this woman? One of the younger guards muttered, lowering his barrel slightly. Edith pressed her advantage and pointed a trembling but accusatory finger at Stefano. You follow a boy who shoots his own blood, she shouted. You follow a boy who breaks the omerta for quick money. Look at him. He deals with the Russians. He sells the routes to outsiders. He is not Moretti. He is a traitor to the name you swore to protect. Stefano's face turned a violent shade of purple. His gun hand shook. Shut her up. She's a witch. Shoot her. But no one fired. The men were frozen. Edith had cast a spell, invoking the one thing Stefano could not buy, tradition. She was speaking to their souls, reminding them that they were soldiers, not mercenaries. The American, Edith continued, gesturing to Dominic without looking away from the guards, came alone. He came unarmed to sign a paper. He respects the old ways. He respects the hierarchy. Stefano spits on it. If you kill us, you kill the honor of this family. And for what? So Stefano can buy a yacht and leave you all to rot in prison. The captain of the guards looked at Stefano, his expression hardening. Then he looked at the wounded Luca. The balance of power in the room was shifting, tilting on the axis of Edith's words. Shoot her! Stefano screamed, panic cracking his voice. He realized he was losing them. He realized the girl had stripped him naked in front of his own men. Stefano swung his gun back toward Edith's chest, finger tightening on the trigger. D. Bang! The sound was deafening, like thunder trapped inside a tin can. Edith flinched and squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for impact, waiting for darkness, but the pain never came. She heard a wet thud, then the clatter of metal on concrete. She opened her eyes. Stefano was standing there with utter confusion on his face. He looked down at the red blossom spreading across his shirt. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a gurgle of blood came out. He crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Behind him, Luca Moretti held a smoking pistol. The old man had drawn his concealed weapon while everyone was watching Edith. He had done what his guards could not. He had removed the cancer from his own family. The warehouse fell silent. Luca stared at his nephew's body for a long moment. Then he lowered the gun and looked at his men. It is done, he rasped in the dialect. The boy was confused. He lost his way. The guards immediately lowered their weapons and bowed their heads. The hierarchy was restored. Luca turned to Edith and studied her, the fierce, trembling American girl who spoke with the tongue of his ancestors. He nodded slowly, a mark of supreme respect. Then he turned to Dominic. The contract, he said. Do you still want it? Dominic walked forward, stepping over Stefano's body without looking down. He did not look at the papers on the table. He looked only at Luca. I want it all, Dominic said softly. I want the shipping lanes. I want the logistics. And I want you retired. Tonight you go to your villa in Palermo, and you never touch a phone again. Luca sighed, the fight draining out of him. He was tired. He was wounded. And he had just killed his brother's son. Take it, he said. It is too heavy for me now. Luca scrawled his signature on the document with a shaking hand and pushed the paper toward Dominic. Dominic did not celebrate. He folded the contract and placed it in his pocket. He turned to Edith and said nothing. He crossed the distance between them and grabbed her hand, his grip tight and desperate, as if making sure she was real. Let's go home, he whispered. They walked out of the warehouse with their backs to the armed men and the dead body. They stepped into the blinding Italian sunlight, just as the sirens of the Carabinieri began to wail in the distance, finally called by Dominic's security team, who had tracked the car. Edith stopped near the Alfa Romeo. Her legs gave out. The adrenaline crashed, leaving her shaking violently. Dominic caught her before she fell and pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her hair. He held her there in the middle of the desolate port, indifferent to the approaching police. You saved me, she whispered into his ruined shirt. Dominic pulled back to look at her. His eyes were fierce with something that went far beyond gratitude. No, he said, wiping dirt from her cheek. You saved us. I just drove the car. 6 months later, the Obsidian Room was buzzing. It was a Friday night, and the tables were fully booked. Roger, still sweating as usual, snapped his fingers at a new waitress. Table 4 needs water. Move. At table 4, the most exclusive table in the house, a couple sat. The man was Dominic Caldwell. He looked relaxed, far happier than he ever had in the magazines. Across from him sat a woman wearing a red dress that cost more than Roger's car. She was reviewing a portfolio of philanthropic investments for the Stevens Foundation, a new charity dedicated to linguistic scholarships for underprivileged youth. Roger approached the table and bowed low. Mr. Caldwell, Miss Stevens, is everything to your liking? Edith looked up and smiled. It was a kind smile, but it carried a steel that made Roger nervous. The water is a bit warm, Roger, she said softly, but the service is improving. I will get fresh ice immediately, ma'am. Roger stammered and scurried away. Dominic laughed and reached across the table to take her hand. You enjoy that, don't you? A little bit, Edith admitted. You know, Dominic said, his thumb brushing her engagement ring. I remember the first time I saw you here. I told my guards, don't let her leave. Edith raised an eyebrow. Dominic kissed her knuckles. Now I'm the one who's never leaving.